Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Facebook Live with GAE. I am Lisa Morgan, president and a kindergarten teacher in DeKalb County.
And my name is Sharon Doe. I'm a high school physics teacher in Augusta, Georgia, and I'm the vice president of the Georgia Association of Educators.
Good evening, I'm Carly Shaw, and I'm a physical science teacher in Fulton County, and I'm the secretary treasurer of GAE.
And you're muted again, Joe.
Is it me now?
Yes.
I'm Joe Fleming. I'm the lobbyist for the Georgia Association of Educators.
And we have with us this evening from Public Education Matters, Georgia, Carolyn Wood. Carolyn, welcome. Thank you for joining us this evening.
Thank you, Lisa. Thank you, GAE, for letting me join y'all tonight. I'm really excited to be here with such an august group. So for those who don't know what Public Education Matters Georgia is, we are a statewide advocacy organization, nonprofit, working to advocate for responsible education policy. So for 10 years, we've been at the Capitol with Joe Fleming and other great GAE folks. And we work at the Capitol, then we work across the state, also at grassroots organizing. If it has to do with public education, you can figure that we have our finger in it somewhere. And so we have a long relationship with GAE, which I am very grateful for.
Okay. So you told us a little bit about Public Education Matters Georgia. Can you tell us how you got started and what's been the things that have been most important over the years that you all have been working on?
Thank you, Lisa. I can. Public Education Matters Georgia is, the name is bigger than the group. I have two colleagues who work with me in this nonprofit, and two of us are attorneys. I'm an attorney, and my colleague Janet Kishwa is an attorney. I've worked for years in a large law firm here in Atlanta, and a large piece of my practice was in education law. So I've always been interested in this area of the world, and then I've had three children who've gone through a fabulous, amazing public education system, and I was quite involved in that, as was Janet. Then our third member is Cecily Harsh-Kanane, who is a former Atlanta Public School School Board member and a former teacher, math teacher. So the three of us about 10 years ago decided that we wanted to be more involved in the advocacy side of public education, and we formed our group, worked initially with groups like Southern Education Foundation and with GAE from the very beginning, to tell you the truth, 10 years ago. Some of the highlights, I would say one of the things that we were most involved in, quite involved with y'all on, is the Amendment 1 fight from 2014 to 2016. And that involved bringing, I think one of the most gratifying pieces of it is it involved bringing an entire coalition of people who were agreed upon one thing, that we all loved our public schools and we wanted to keep it local and we didn't need the state taking over our schools. And with NEA's help and all the local help here of GAE and all, there were at one point in this coalition that came together, there were 60 plus groups working together, and the groups that didn't agree on everything, no coalition ever is, right? But these groups believed in our schools and in local control, and we were able to, defeat that amendment by a 60-40 split. So that was really gratifying to see what happens when advocates pull together, and I think that's what we're intent on doing, and what we're doing now around the issues of CRT, the pushback on CRT, and actually, really around funding. I mean, that's one of the biggest issues that we work on all the time, is fully, fairly, and adequately funding our schools. So it's exciting work, and it's exciting to get to meet all the other people who are so invested in this system as well.
So what are some of the bills that stand out in this legislative session that you all be working on?
Well, we've been spending a lot of time for the last week. I'm sure everybody here has heard about HB 888. And it's the first anti-CRT bill. It will certainly not be the last. we hear that there are others getting ready to drop at any moment. Is that what you're hearing, Joe? That they're just right out there?
Yeah, I think there's gonna be a slew of them, frankly. And as you know, Carolyn, the governor alluded to in his State of the State address that he would be supporting a bill like this that chills debate and discussion in classrooms about race, American history, and I don't
Current
think
events?
yeah, current events exactly. I don't think we've seen that bill yet, so that's yet to come as well.
Yeah.
So, you know, you may want to talk about it, Carolyn, but you know, today's appropriations committee meeting, which is supposed to be about how the state spends its money, kind of devolved into a series of accusations about whether students are being taught to feel guilty or think less of themselves because of how history is being taught. So it's clear that it will be a major issue this session.
Joe, that is such an astute comment. So now I've been at the Capitol for 10 years, and so I've been to 10 of these budget pronouncements about the education budget. I've never seen one like this. They are typically very sober, thoughtful discussions about the budget and the dollars, and the questions that come up tend to be around the dollars. But what about this? And, you know, and what about this group of students? What are the resources for this group? Those are what the questions have been in the past. This was this time the questions were really around, as Joe said, you know, are our students, are there oppressive programs that our students are being, you know, indoctrinated with? Or I mean, it was so much more political than anything I've seen in that room for those purposes in the past, that it was a little unnerving to watch, to tell you the truth. And I think it's really a harbinger of things to come for this session. This session happens to be the legislative session of a huge election year. So I think there's going to be a lot of that. And as Joe said, the governor has said that he was going to support a bill around anti-CRT. And in fact, I believe he's going to have his own bill on it.
Yeah.
I believe that to be the case.
But it's important that people know that House Bill 888 would impose substantial financial penalties on school districts if they deviate from the curriculum approved by the state school board, of up to 20% of their state funding. And I'll at least explain all the reasons why we're concerned about legislation in this area. But that bill is nasty. I mean, it's
that bill is really bad. And, you know, I don't know. We did a financial analysis of it, because at this point there are 31 legislators who've signed on to this bill. And so we just did a financial analysis of the school districts that those 31 representatives represent. And there are 64 districts that the 31 of them represent. If those districts were to lose their 20% of QBA, of the QBE allotment, it's about $673 million of penalties to students for this. And I think that's a really great question to ask legislators. You represent these districts, and you're willing to make their budgets, you know, to make their budgets this vulnerable. That's not being a steward of, you know, for the students or their district or the school districts. So that's a big one. That's a big one, Dr. Doe, that you asked about. You know, what we're looking at. We're looking at that. We're also looking at, there are a couple bills floating around. There's more on the censorship issue, right? It's censorship around books, around materials, around technology. So that's coming. There are two bills that are sort of hangovers from last session that are there, but we're expecting a new one to come out from Representative Jan Jones. So that's any moment that may be out there. There's a pattern going on that we see of defunding, of attempts to defund public school. And so we have a constitutional amendment that's been floated by actually the President Pro Tem of the Senate, who's running for Lieutenant Governor, that would create a homestead exemption for any homeowner in a school district in which their curriculum was in any way inconsistent with state board curriculum, which doesn't even set curriculum, but that's a whole other issue, right? So, you know, that the chilling effect of that kind of, I mean, and the idea that there's this idea of we just, those dollars are ours to take away. I find that an offensive idea. These dollars are allocated for students. You know, 90+% of our kids in Georgia go to public schools. These dollars are their dollars.
At the same time, the state's spending record amounts on private school tuition.
Absolutely.
So, yeah, good point.
So
Yeah.
I think it's great that you're letting everyone know about the bills that are detrimental to public education. Are there any out there that we can support that are actually helpful to educators and our children?
Yes, may I?
Yeah.
You ask the best questions. Thank you. Yes. So let's look at House Bill 10. That is one that's that it gives the extra support, the extra dollars for students living in poverty. Yeah, and that's a bill we are really behind, and we're going to be pushing hard for this year. That Georgia Budget and Policy Institute is really behind this one also, and it has been quite a wonderful advocate for this bill. So look for action on that one. I actually, you know, I'm cautiously optimistic about that because of what Joe alluded to. We have the as you all know, the state budget that we have record funds this year.
Mm-hmm.
You know, this is not, we're in such a different situation than 2 years. Oh my God, 2 years ago, you know, I never thought we'd see this day where we're talking about excess dollars and ending austerity cuts. So I think there's some room for this bill to actually see a little bit of sunlight. I'm hopeful, very hopeful about that bill. HB 518 is a bill we're really liking now because it would be the waivers that DOE just routinely grants. This would stop those. It would eliminate the routine granting of those, and that would be really beneficial to students and school districts and teachers. What else are we really enjoying here? What are we excited about, Joe? What else is out there?
Well, there are good things in the governor's budget.
Oh, that budget, yeah. A lot of good things.
Bonuses.
Teachers, state employees.
That's right. And the restoration of full funding for QBE. Of course,
Yeah.
full funding QBE is not necessarily adequate funding.
Yeah, I always want to make that point because, I mean, in 2015, when the governor had the Governor's Education Reform Commission, and they were tasked with reviewing QBE, because QBE is from 1985, right? It's a bit of an outdated model for how a formula. They were tasked with reviewing that. But before they started that, the chair of that committee said to them, we are not here to figure out what it costs to educate a child. You know, that's when you get into adequate funding. What does it really cost to educate a child? They were told from the outset that that was not it. It was really essentially, how do we reshuffle QBE? The dollars that we have, is there a better formula for the dollars that we have, rather than what dollars do we need? I mean, that's the question we all need to, that's why we continuously say what Joe was just saying. It's fully, fairly, and adequately funding. And that's an important modifier there. Adequately funding is important because we're not there yet. And I don't think we can let any of our legislators off the hook by restoring austerity cuts and funding QBE. That's great. But that's a baseline. Now I'm going to climb off my soapbox.
That's one thing I talked about in my response to the governor's State of the State address, that QBE, I literally said, it stands for quality basic education. Isn't it time we move past basic? I want my children to have an exemplary education.
I love
And
that.
how do we fund that? One of the other things, Joe, you mentioned this, and since we're talking about the budget, I'm sure we'll get back to some of the other stuff in a couple of minutes, because, you know, I've been sitting here on my hands about some of that stuff. There is an increase in the budget for the private school vouchers. And yeah, Carly, we knew that was coming, from SB 47 last year.
Mhm.
So how much, Joe, I think I remember it was
The increase?
the increase. Yeah.
I
How
don't
much
have the
more?
number in front of me, but we can certainly find out.
Yeah.
Give me half a second. I think I have that, but it requires me looking at my phone. So
Okay.
excuse me for a nanosecond here.
Okay. One of our people who's watching us said that they're excited about building on SB 48 and improving outcomes for children with dyslexia. And one of the things about that is that we've been watching the state board since 2019 try to work on the rules that will be implemented for that bill, and it's still going through that process. So that is one of the things that we will continue to watch, because at one point they were literally almost making SST about dyslexia alone, and we know that's not SST. Yes, considers students with dyslexia, but the SST is there for all of our students if they experience challenges. So, but
I'll circle back and tell you the number just before we forget that. So the special needs scholarship increase for 23 is about 3 million. It's 2.9. It's 2.9 for 23.
So almost 3 million.
But there's a piece in it for the amended budget also for 22, which is right. Well, it's that 3 bill. It's 2.9.
Yeah, 3 million. And that's what we were talking about last year. So that's $3 million that should be going for our students in public schools that will now be going to private schools where those students are not required to get the specialized instruction they need.
And
They have
we're,
no federal protections once they leave our system.
Right.
and where most times they end up coming back into the public school system because their needs are not being met in the private school sector. And our funding. So
Right.
it's a hot mess.
Yeah. And once they leave, the funding doesn't come back, but the student comes back. I think we've all
Exactly.
experienced that. Yeah.
And I have heard that this year, like almost every year, there will be a bill drop to increase the private school tax credit also, which right now is capped at 100 million a year that it can divert from the public schools. But there's, I mean, you know, there's always a push. And of course, this year, the education savings accounts, and that will come back because the sponsor of that bill, this is his last year. He's not going to come back. So there may be the idea of throwing him a bone on his way out. So all of these, I'm going to go back to my theme of defunding public education.
Yeah.
There's a constant.
I think we've seen that play out. Defund public education, then say public education is failing, so we have to do something to fix public education because it's failing. But so it's a vicious cycle, and I think we're caught in that cycle with, unfortunately, people who give lip service to supporting public education, but they don't truly support public education as a public good for all our students.
Right.
And that's.
So somebody asked the question, what good bills are out there? The good bills are far, far outnumbered by the bad bills this year. We've got bills that would allow guns on campus without permits. We've got all these other bad things that we've talked about. I mean, public education is truly under attack in Georgia right now, and it's a real shame to see that. So we've got some offense, but we're going to be on defense a good bit this year too.
I alluded to a couple that were kind of holdovers from last session that have to do with banning books and, you know, things like. One of them I'm sure y'all all know this, would actually criminalize media specialists.
Yeah.
So, on the statutes now, it's a criminal offense in Georgia to distribute offensive material, I think is what it is, just harmful material to minors. And always that has had an exception for public school libraries, and this would accept the exception. So public school libraries would no longer be exempt from that. So I don't think that's going to happen, but it sure is ugly to have that out there. And that sure is, once again, back to your point of not valuing public education, to even float the idea of criminalizing our media specialists.
Well, Carolyn, one of my concerns about the critical race theory type bills that we're seeing is that one of them is going to be targeted at teachers.
Yeah.
The superintendents have a powerful lobby. School boards are elected and have political sway. We do, but I could see a bill that goes after the individual teacher, either through disciplinary action through the Professional Standards Commission. 888 opens the door to legal and litigation. So we'll be watching that, because educators could really be in the crosshairs on something like that.
I
And,
agree with Joe. I think that's really smart of you.
and I think it's important that all of our educators understand that we aren't going to use the letters CRT because we know that no educator in the state of Georgia is teaching CRT. It is a master's and above level concept. That is a college level course. If we are teaching in Georgia public schools, kindergarten to 12th grade, we are not teaching master's level material. But our students deserve that they receive instruction for a full, honest account of our history. And that's what we have to focus on. That's what our professional integrity demands us to do. That's what our students deserve. And actually, the public agrees with us on that.
Mm-hmm.
But I think we really have to focus on that. And the thing I've been sitting here, on my fingers, the state does not have curriculum. The state sets the standards. Okay, so there is no state of Georgia curriculum for kindergarten reading. There is no state of Georgia curriculum for 8th grade science or US history. There are the standards, and the standards simply say what our students have to know, understand, and be able to do. And if you're teaching those standards, there's no way to deviate from a curriculum when you are teaching what the standards say. And that's one thing that will get me on my soapbox. I actually got out and I read it to Joe. I read it to some other people. I may print it off and carry it with me to the legislators. I may pass out a copy of it. My teaching contract that I signed, the first page has all the financial stuff. It says, this is the salary you're being paid right now. And then there's like 3 paragraphs about how they may or may not pay me that next year, but I'm still expected. Then the next page is all the things I'm required to do. And the very first thing says that I am required to teach the curriculum as adopted by the DeKalb County Board of Education.
Exactly.
So,
So a lot of this is political grandstanding, right? And yeah, but there are 2 really scary, there's a lot of scary stuff in HB 888.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things is that no, teachers can't compel students to participate in discussions of public policy. That literally is, a civics class, that is current events, that is
Government class.
Government. I don't know how I don't know how a high schooler goes through high school without those discussions. And those are what you want your students to be having. The other thing that I think is going to be, if this bill were to actually pass, that would be really burdensome for schools and teachers, is the requirement that all the materials that are used are going to have to be on your website. You know, all primary. I think at this point, I think it's primary, if I'm remembering that correctly, Joe. I think it's all primary material that you're using would have to be. What a onerous task, but you know, it's in keeping with there's in front of the state board now a new state board proposed rule that goes to transparency, and Secretary Wood spoke to that some today in his presentation, but it goes to that also. And that again, there's their theory that they want parents to know what's going on in the classroom, and you know, we certainly want involved parents in, you know, having had 3 children in the systems. I want to be involved, but the burden of putting everything you're going to use in the classroom on there and changing it every time you change any piece of your materials. I mean, that's untenable, and we all know it is, but it's, you know,
Are they,
brand standing.
my sarcastic comment's going to be, are they including funding for secretaries for every teacher to be putting all this stuff on the website? You know, I think about, well, I have the pictures. When I moved out of my classroom, we moved from one building to another building when they built a new building. I literally had a moving truck that brought all of my items that I used into my new classroom. And I had a copy paper box with my read aloud books, and I had 15 of those boxes. And
good luck.
Yeah. And the way, you know, the way I would choose which book I was going to use as a read aloud, that, you know, I might intend tomorrow to read one book about Martin Luther King, but oh no, we're running behind. I don't have time to read that one. Let me read this one. It's a little bit shorter. So we're going to take that. I mean, those things happen in the classroom.
I'm just sitting here thinking, when she's talking and saying all of this stuff, common sense must have left the building when they were writing that. That's clearly someone who has never spent a significant amount of time in a classroom.
Yeah.
I know you, Lisa, I know you asked all your members.
Yeah.
At one point, what would you want legislators to know? You know, people who are actually dealing with education laws, would you like them to know about what's happening in the classroom now? And that's to your point, Dr. Duff. We'd like you to know what this would really mean on a practical level to teachers. Because on the one hand, Governor, you're trying to fulfill your campaign promise of a $5,000 raise to teachers, and you're lauding them and telling them how much. But on the other hand, you're putting so much on them now. What's going to be the straw that breaks the camel's back here?
Yep.
Yeah.
Well, unfortunately, it's already broken quite a few camel's backs. We have teachers leaving the profession in record numbers.
Yep.
Can I ask you a question about that? Because one of the things that I was surprised to hear Secretary Wood say in his statement today was that the 2021 retention numbers were better than previously. And that is not what I thought. I don't know where that came from. That was my face too. That was exactly what I looked like when I heard that. I'm going to look back and look at my, actually, it's on one of his slides.
I don't know if this is the reason, Carolyn. TRS has shown fewer retirements, and they trace part of it to the initial pay raise.
Right.
Of teachers wanting to stick around for another 3 years. So that's incorporated. I don't know if that explains.
That's interesting. Maybe that there has to be some footnote here.
Which shows
I mean, to be honest, I don't know that the teachers are retiring. They're just leaving.
Right.
And that's why we're not seeing those numbers there. I know teachers that are just leaving the profession. They're finding other jobs in other professions, and they're not retiring from teaching. They're just leaving teaching.
Well, here's the exact statement. Let me read it to you here. Despite the pandemic, retention rates in 2020-21 improved compared to previous years. And I sat up when I heard that. So, I give that to y'all to decide whether that's an accurate statement,
I think 2020, 2021, we may have seen people not making those moves
Mm,
because of this uncertainty
we were also scared.
of the
Right.
pandemic.
Mhm.
But I think if we talk to teachers and from across the state, they will say people are leaving. And people who had no intentions of leaving
Yeah.
are, I've said it many, many times. The number one word I have heard this year from educators is exhausted.
I can't begin to imagine.
Mhm.
One
Teach
of the
it
things-
virtually and at the same time teach them in person, and do it without your children in the next room, because you go get your daycare for your own children. I mean, I thank y'all for everything you do.
One of the things I think we need to go back and talk about when we were talking about that hearing today, and I'm going to read this. This is what an educator said that they want them to hear from us. Struggles are real. We need to focus on mental health, social and emotional issues, and be real and practice. Be honest and acknowledge that we are not in a place where academics can improve until we address the elephant, zebra, whatever that is in the room. And I think that's something, as educators, I always go back to Maslow's hierarchy of needs. We have to say, they have to have their physical needs met first. Then they have to have that social and emotional, that sense of security and belonging met before they can truly learn. And that's another piece of this that, we're hearing, no, we don't want social emotional learning. We don't want you to social emotional learning in school. We don't want you focused on diversity and equity and inclusion. I'm just going to characterize what I've been hearing. And y'all, what I've heard is shut up and teach. And shut up and teach what's exactly on that page in the book.
Teach reading, writing, and arithmetic, basically.
Yeah, teach reading, writing, and arithmetic, and teach it the same way to every student every day. Which
That is not the reality of
That
what.
is not feasible, is it, Carly?
Oh my goodness, I couldn't let that statement go without making that comment. I'm so sorry.
Oh no, that's what I'm saying. I've been in the classroom. Y'all are in the classroom. Okay. I taught kindergarten. Carly, how many years have you taught middle school science?
25.
25. Okay. 20 years in kindergarten. Sharon, how many years have you taught your high school science, the same subject?
30.
Okay. You never, I know I didn't. If maybe I'm wrong, maybe I'm strange, maybe I'm weird. I never taught the same things the exact same way.
No.
It doesn't happen. And I think that's, we always hear that legislators think because they were the student that they know what you do as a teacher, as an educator. They have their one experience. So, they think just because Miss Morgan taught reading this way to me when I was in the class, that's the way it always happens. And that's not the way it is. From one day to the next, your approach may change because
Or even
one
within the
class to the next.
classroom, your
Yeah.
approach changes depending on the student.
yes,
I
we're
would hope
teaching,
so. Mhm.
we're teaching children. Yes, they're not little robots. They're children.
One of the things I wanted to throw out is for folks who are watching who are interested, and if you're watching, you're obviously interested and invested in all these issues and what's happening at the Capitol. I think at some point Lisa's going to put links to our Facebook page and to the Coalition for Public Education's Facebook page, because we post a lot of what's happening at the Capitol. But what made me think about that was that often a hashtag that we use is trust teachers. And that's what I think y'all are, I mean, you have, you're experts. You've studied to become experts in your fields. Now we need to trust you to do it.
Yeah.
So
Treat us
hashtag
like an expert.
that
Yes.
you are. Yes.
Like an expert.
Yeah.
I'm beginning to feel like I need to get my button. I've got one that says those who can teach,
Mhm.
those who can't make laws about teaching. And Joe's got
Well,
that.
don't
big
wear it
look
when you
on
come
his
to the
face,
Capitol,
"Please
okay?"
Don't wear that one to the Capitol.
Don't wear that one to the Capitol, because I would love to have all of you at the Capitol. And I know, I see Lisa there a lot. I'd love to have you all, because what you're saying is what our legislators need to hear. A dose of reality.
And that's a great segue, not actually a segue, but we do have our GAE. I put the Facebook links in, and I am putting right
Thank
now the link to our GAE Day at the Capitol, which is February 24th, right, Joe? 24th?
That is correct.
Okay. Yeah, make sure I'm getting my day right. February 24th. And that is the day that we are asking our members, go ahead. I know it's hard. Go ahead and try to get you a sub now, because we know there's a shortage of subs, so that they can see the experts at the Capitol. And
And Lisa, one thing that we've seen that has been, we work with a lot of young students who are advocating for, particularly on the censorship bill, and we've had them, if someone can't get a substitute in these times, we've had them read other students' statements in testimony, and that's been quite effective also. So I throw that as a tool, because I know that not every teacher can leave a classroom.
Yep.
Did you see
Write
that
a statement. Every teacher can write a statement, though. I'm sorry.
Did you see that story, Carolyn, that students cannot testify before the Cobb County School Board?
I did.
You have to be 18 to testify.
You need a parent if you want to testify. And Cobb County is an anomaly in that. But Cobb
Yeah.
County is an anomaly in many ways. But they are an anomaly in that most districts do allow. And so a good friend of mine heads the First Amendment Foundation, and Richard Griffiths is quoted in that article today, Joe, on that about if we want to if you want to raise civic-minded, critically thinking adults, the way you do that is let them speak on issues that matter to them.
yeah.
So I hope Cobb will review that. I know that the students, back to how great our students are, the students are asking the board to change that policy. So it's the student-led movement in Cobb County, which I'm always thrilled to see them doing that, advocating for their own selves.
It makes you wonder about some of these bills that we've been talking about, how much they would limit student inquiry and discussion as well. Not just what teachers can teach, but even what students can ask about, and the chilling effect it would logically have on teachers who may lose their job if they don't handle those questions correctly.
Right, or cost their district 20% of their state funds.
Yeah.
Or bankrupt the school district through $100,000 homestead exemption.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll tell y'all the first thing that came to my mind when I saw the one that you can't force a child to discuss current events. I see that student who hasn't done their homework coming in, and the teacher asked them a question. You can't force me to answer that question, and you can't give me a 0.
Oh, yeah.
Because you can't force me to discuss this, and you can't give me a 0 because you don't know if I know it or not. And
Right.
so, is that really? And we have some students, who would go there.
Mhm.
And you're going to have some students recording this in classrooms.
Mhm.
There are already folks being solicited to bring actions against teachers and in school districts. So it's scary. So I've had some people say to me, "Oh, don't worry too much about HB 888. There are other ones coming. This isn't going to be the real one." But I think it's really important to worry about the bill that's in front of us right now. I always think it is important because it's the opening salvo of the battle, right? And so I don't want folks to think when we get a bill that doesn't have that public policy discussion piece in it next time, oh, well, this one's okay. No, it's not okay either. Let's fight all of them.
Well, if nothing else, it reveals some of the thinking and motives of those that have sponsored and are supporting House Bill 888. Some members I'm frankly very disappointed in.
I'm very disappointed in when you look at that list of 31 who've signed on so far. And quite frankly, that list is going to grow.
Yeah.
I haven't checked the bill back in the last couple of days, Joe. For all I know, there's some more signers on.
Yeah, we'll be down there tomorrow and check it out.
That's great. Yeah.
Somebody's asking about good news. One bit of good news, we've got a hearing next week on a bill that we like, which is House Bill 385, which allows retired teachers to return to the classroom full-time while drawing full salary and their retirement benefits. They don't accrue an additional retirement time, but their portion of TRS and the school's portion will be paid by the school. It is billed as a way to address teacher shortages, and we hope it does.
Perfect timing. I mean, what a great move right now.
It's a good bill. We need a lot more of that, and I think, just from what I said earlier, that we refer to TRS, pay raises matter, and we're not offering competitive salary to college graduates when they're coming out of school and can make 3 times as much in their first job. So we got to continue the fight on starting teacher salaries as well as salaries and benefits for our educational support professionals in schools. They're vastly underpaid, and the benefits they receive are really poor. So shout out to our ESPs. We're working for you.
Mhm.
Yes. Joe, since you brought that up, let's talk about the bonuses that the governor announced in the modified budget for this year.
Yeah.
I know we're still working on getting all that information.
Right. And I kind of want to discuss with you some of the interpretations of that. But it appears, so we were concerned about a statement in the governor's State of the State comments that talked about state-funded positions. And not all of our GAE members work in state-funded positions. And it was difficult in reading the governor's text whether he was referring to one group as state-funded and then other groups separately. We may have gotten some clarification from the Department of Education today, and we may have some more work to do. But, and Lisa, this is kind of where I need your help interpreting it. It appears to me that the bonus will be available to most education support professionals. There may be one category that may have been overlooked that we're working on, and I believe the department's working on fixing. But it appears, and we'll clarify this in more details this week, that full-time $2,000, whether you're a classroom teacher or an ESP, except for one possible oversight. And then if you're part-time, $1,000. Okay. Is that the way you read that, Lisa?
Yeah, it was. And, this is one of those things, it was in the State of the State. It's good news. It's news we want to hear. But it's in the modified budget. And guess what that means? Last year he announced bonuses and they were done. That means we have to lobby our legislators to approve this in the modified budget for this year. And we will continue working so that all ESPs, all school employees are included.
And I think that the Department of Education and Superintendent Woods, and probably the governor, I've not talked to the governor,
Right.
believe that's the intention, is that all ESPs and classroom teachers would be recipients of this bonus. But it's our mission at GAE to make sure that's clear. And that is what, in fact, what happens.
Sometimes our best intentions aren't what come to be. So we want to make sure that if that's the governor's intention, and we will, at this point, accept that we believe that is his intention. We want to make sure that's what actually happens.
That's right.
So, and so the other thing, but I want to, since we're saying that, it has to be approved by the legislature. And that would probably mid-February at the earliest, we would see that happen.
Yeah, I think it's probably about right. They always do so they actually pass 2 budgets every year. One is for the next fiscal year, which happens to coincide with the next, does it coincide with the next school year?
Pretty much.
It starts in the summer.
Yeah, the fiscal year
over-
starts July 1st, and we have people going back to school at the end of July, so yeah.
Okay, so anyway, July 21st budget beginning through 2023, they do that. But first they make adjustments to the current year budget based on revenues and any shift in priorities. These bonuses are part of this year's budget. So once that's passed and signed by the governor, hopefully the check should start coming. We had a couple of GAE members that had difficulty getting their checks last year because the LEA didn't think that they qualified, I guess is one way of saying it, but we corrected them and our members got their bonus eventually. But they should, who knows, takes a while to run checks and process stuff, but I would think that, by the end of the school year, checks should be rolling for bonuses.
We're hearing the potential of a much shorter legislative session, not shorter, it'd be the same number of days, but ending earlier than other years, mid-March. And the only requirement our legislature has is to pass a budget. They could go home without doing anything else, that never happens, but that is literally the only requirement the legislature has. So I'm with Joe. I think, that'll be signed. Those will be happening sooner rather than later this year, I would think.
Yeah.
And I'm going to be the bearer of bad news though, because I know this question is going to be asked. Yes, we have to pay taxes on it. Okay.
But remember that the governor, part of what he's doing with that 1.6 billion is giving every taxpayer a $250 refund, state refund.
Yeah. So but you're going to pay taxes on that bonus. We had some people last year very upset that they had to pay taxes on their bonus. It's one of those things. You're going to have to pay the taxes. Carolyn, would you like to, I will put the link in the comments. Would you like to tell them about what you all are doing next week about public education and bringing people together?
Yes. Actually I hope it's 2 weeks from now. I hope it is. February 3rd. And why I say we, Public Education Matters Georgia and the Georgia Coalition for Public Education, that larger group, are putting on a convening of all public education advocates. It's open to all public education advocates, and it's going to be highlighting what we're seeing at the legislature, what's going on down there. But it's also really going to focus on best messaging and communication around these issues, because we know, just as Lisa so astutely said earlier, we're not going to be talking about CRT because it's not happening. So what we're going to be talking about is teaching an honest education to our students. I mean, there are ways to message that are more persuasive for arguments. So, and we have some experts on that who will be talking at that point about some very specific Georgia messaging and communication. So I'm real excited about this, and I would love folks to get it on their calendars. What Lisa is dropping into, I guess, into the chat, Lisa, is
In the comments. Yeah.
the comments, okay, is a sign up sheet. So if you're interested in getting more information about this, just give us, it's your name, email, and organization if you want to do that. But that way, when we have the invitation ready to go by the end of this week, you'll be on that and that'll give you the registration link for the event. But right now it's February 3rd, which is a Thursday night from 6 o'clock to 7:30. So and I promise a good time will be had by all. So
And
I'm looking forward to seeing folks there.
I
Thank you
also,
for helping me share that, Lisa.
yes, I put another link in the comments as well. We filled you up. We want you to register for everything. GAE Day at the Capitol, this convening where you're going to learn a whole lot about what's going to be happening and how to best address it with our legislators. And then I also put GAE, our retired, are having a day at the Capitol February 8th. Please tell me that's the right date, because I'm going completely off memory. And I put the registration link for that, for their day at the Capitol, and it is February 8th. And we know that our retired members are always there. When we're in our classrooms teaching, they are there to lobby on our behalf. And so if you're available to assist that day, it would be very helpful. And since I'm doing commercials, I'm going to do the last one now. Not next Tuesday, Tuesday, January 25th at 6:30 is our next Rights at Night. And that night we will be talking about our employee rights and what we need to do to protect those in our classroom. And I think this is something that we all need to be paying attention to. And we will be talking about how do you document things so you are prepared when that parent makes the complaint that you were teaching something you shouldn't be teaching. I saw a college professor say all these bills that are saying we should not do anything to make students feel discomfort or be uncomfortable. Being uncomfortable is required for learning. You know, you can't learn something if you don't realize that you don't know it yet. And it's a requirement. So during this Rights at Night, talking about educator rights, we'll also be talking about those things you need to do to protect your rights and protect yourself and your career. And that's the end of our commercials for the evening.
Awesome.
Yeah, Joe, we've got about 7 minutes. So yeah, tell us, we've talked about what's happening this week. Not much happened last week. There wasn't much to talk about that happened last week. I mean, they were in and out pretty much every day.
There was a football game. I think
Yeah,
that had something to do with in and out. So there was a football game.
We don't talk about that.
Oh.
Some of us do.
Yeah, Joe will be happy to talk with you offline. What are we expecting next week?
So they'll be back in session on Monday, and we know Tuesday and Wednesday of next week. As far as I know, Carolyn, the calendar only goes through Wednesday of next week. We do have meetings of the retirement committees next week, and we do have meetings of education committees next week. Most of those meetings have no agenda posted yet. The House Retirement Committee will focus in on HB 385, which I mentioned earlier, which is allows retired educators to return to the classroom while drawing benefits. But the budget committees will continue to look through the budget and begin to break down by subcommittees. So the education subcommittee of the appropriations committee will meet, and they'll begin digging a little deeper into the budget. And that, for education this year, frankly, could be tricky. I don't want to invite bad things, but we'll be there and fighting for our members on that. So the committees are going to be able to begin running. There'll probably be more coming up that we'll be interested in. We're going to have bills that we're following that are in committees that we aren't normally engaged with. For example, some of the gun bills, to the extent that they intrude upon school safety zone laws, are something we're going to watch. I know a lot of our members have an interest in election law, and there's going to be some bills proposed on election law too. There are already 3 bills carrying over from last year about transgender students in sports. There's the governor basically embraced that concept too in his speech, which is unfortunate. But we'll be keeping an eye out for all those. We're gonna have a full plate this year. There's a lot going on. It's never been a more important time to be engaged with GAE and engaged with your legislators. Your voice to your legislator counts for a whole lot. And hearing from an expert educator who votes in their district matters. So we have put together a group where we have paired off members and legislators so that our members can become that hometown advocate and that constituent advocate. If you'll drop an email to lct@gae.org, we'll be happy to get you information on that effort. We will give you the information you need and help you build that relationship with legislators so that truly when they see an education bill, they think to call you first and ask for your thoughts and your guidance on that. But we will need all the voices and hands of GA engaged this year, and the day at the Capitol on the 24th is an important way to show force and to lobby on specific bills that are pending on that particular day or time.
I want to just amplify what Joe said. I once had a fairly powerful legislator say to me, Carolyn, I hear what you're saying. You know, I've heard you for a long time saying this. And he said, I know it's important when I hear from 6 constituents. 6, that was all, my mouth fell open, 6. But he said, 6 tells me something's happening. So it's really, I mean, you can make such a huge difference by contacting your legislators. You and 5 of your friends can make such a huge difference. 6 is a big number for them. So,
yep. And I did put that information in the comments. If you email us, and we will catch you up and help you help us, because Joe said it's important if they hear from that person that lives in their district and votes for them. I think I've been doing this a while, and I know when I would talk to the legislators, I don't live in the same district where I teach. And when I would talk to the legislators and say, I teach at Midway Elementary School, they would all say, oh, that's in my district. Yes, it is. And, you know, I'm here. My students' parents are working. They can't be here. Let's talk about what's good for my students. So, you know, that's 4 legislators you can contact, the 2 that represent you, and then the 2 that represent your students, because they will listen to that as well. I truly believe. We have just a couple more minutes, and I'm just going to say this. We once again today set record numbers of positive COVID cases. 4,094 new cases in children today. So, yeah, we know it's hard. We know that the decision has been made, whether that decision was made right or wrong, that we are going to be face to face with our students until the bitter end. So I would just encourage everyone to do everything you can to keep yourself safe. Wear your mask. And if you have access to a KN95 or an N95, wear the best mask you can get your hands on. If you're not already vaccinated, please be vaccinated, because we know that you may still get sick, but you're much less likely to go to the hospital. And protect our students. And that's kind of where we are, all we can do. I know Sharon had Sharon, you want to tell us what they told you today at your school?
Okay, yes. So in Richmond County, they made an announcement that if you have any symptoms of COVID, any symptoms whatsoever, stay home, don't come to school, don't come to work. And so I had symptoms. I stayed home. I contacted my principal. She gave me a number to call. Our district has its own COVID hotline. And the person on the COVID hotline said, well, you can return to work tomorrow. Tomorrow. And I said, well, what happened to better safe than sorry? Should I get a test? And she said, well, if your symptoms clear or go away, you can return to work. And I was still kind of confused. So I said, without getting a test? So if your symptoms go away, you can go back to work the next day without getting a test. But I went and got a test today because I care about my students. I care about everybody in the school, everybody I come in contact with. And I would want them to have that same compassion for me and my kids. So I went and got a test, and I've already told them that I won't be coming in tomorrow. I'm taking a personal illness day.
Yeah. So,
And I'll do it tomorrow and Friday until I can get those test results back.
Good for you.
thank you. But I think everybody needs to know that that's where we are and that's what's going to happen. So do everything we can to take care of each other. And we will have our next Facebook Live with GAE on February 2nd. That'll be easy for everybody to remember. It's Groundhog Day. And we will be probably into the third active full week of the legislature by then. We'll have all the updates for you, and hopefully we'll be able to talk about some good bills that we'll be working on then, and hopefully some of the bad will have gone away. So thank you all for joining us. Thank you, Carolyn, for being with us this evening.
Oh, I loved it. Thank y'all. What a great group. Thank
And
you.
you all, everybody, stay safe, and we will see you again February 2nd.
Take care.
Good night.
Good night.